My phone buzzed on my desk at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right in the middle of reconciling a client's quarterly taxes. The notification preview made my stomach drop before I even opened it. Mom. Family dinner, Saturday 6 p.m. Your grandmother Catherine is back. Don't be late. Bring something nice, not store-bought cookies. I stared at the screen, my fingers frozen over the calculator. Grandmother Catherine. Back. After 20 years. My name is Claire Jenkins. I'm 27 years old, and I live in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Denver, Colorado. The kind of place where you can hear your neighbor's TV through the walls, and the heater only works if you kick it twice. I work as a junior accountant at Morrison & Associates during the day, and 3 nights a week, I pull shifts at the Copper Mug, a coffee shop near the university where trust fund kids tip in quarters. This life, this small, exhausting paycheck-to-paycheck life, was the price of independence. The price of leaving home at 18 with nothing but a suitcase, a laptop, and a burning need to escape. I looked back at my mother's text. Your grandmother Catherine is back. I was 7 years old when Grandma vanished. One day she was there, teaching me to garden, letting me help with her rose bushes, reading me stories on the porch swing. The next day, she was gone. Grandma needs space, my mother had said, her voice clipped and final. Her health isn't good. She wants to be alone for a while. 7-year-old me had cried for weeks. 27-year-old me still remembered the way Grandma had hugged me that last time. Too tight, too long, her whole body trembling, like she was trying to memorize the feel of me. I never understood why she left. And now, apparently, she was back. My coworker Jessica leaned over the cubicle divider. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Family dinner, I muttered. The kind you can't skip. Ah, she nodded knowingly. The mandatory kind. I texted back, I'll be there. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, bring dessert, something not cheap, classic mom, tusubat. Saturday arrived too quickly. I left my apartment at 5:15 p.m., giving myself plenty of time to stop at the fancy bakery on Colfax Avenue. $45 for a strawberry cheesecake with gold leaf decoration. 6 hours of wages at the Copper Mug. But it would be nice enough for Mom's standards. The drive to the house took 30 minutes through late autumn traffic. As I turned onto Maple Grove Drive, the familiar knot formed in my stomach. This neighborhood, with its manicured lawns and 2-car garages, had never felt like mine, even when I lived here. 428 Maple Grove Drive. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2,800 square feet of suburban perfection worth somewhere between $850,000 and $900,000 in today's market. I'd looked it up once, late at night, torturing myself with the knowledge of what I'd never have. The house looked exactly the same. White siding, blue shutters that Dad had repainted when I was 12 after yelling at me for an hour because I'd spilled paint on the driveway. The rose bushes Grandma had planted were still there, overgrown but surviving. And the porch swing. God, the porch swing. I could still see Grandma sitting there, her weathered hands showing me how to cross-stitch. I pulled into the driveway at 5:58 p.m. As I grabbed the cheesecake box in my purse, I caught sight of Madison's car, a sleek white Lexus, because of course it was. My sister had arrived early. My sister always arrived early. The front door opened before I could knock. Late, my mother announced, not even letting me through the threshold before the criticism landed. It's literally 2 minutes before 6, I said, stepping inside. Diane Jenkins, my mother, stood in the hallway in a designer wrap dress and heels, her dark hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was hosting a dinner party for the mayor, not a family gathering. Madison arrived 20 minutes early, Mom said, taking the cheesecake box from me without a thank you. That's what responsible adults do. I bit my tongue. Some battles weren't worth fighting. The house smelled like garlic butter and Mom's favorite vanilla sugar candles, scents that used to mean comfort but now just meant performance. Everything in this house was a performance. Claire! My sister's voice rang out from the living room, artificially bright. You're here! Madison appeared in a red maternity dress that probably cost more than my rent. At 25, she'd already checked off every box on Mom's list of success. Married to Ryan Porter, a finance guy with family money. Working as a real estate agent with her own client list. Living in a beautiful house 10 minutes away that Dad had helped them buy. Still wearing jeans to family dinners, Madison said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Cute. Still judging people's clothes, I replied. Adorable. Mom shot me a warning look. Claire, living room. Now. I followed her through the house, noting the changes. New kitchen countertops. Marble, expensive. Renovated bathrooms, fresh paint. All of it funded by my parents' money. Money they'd never had when I needed help with college applications or textbook fees. Where's Grandma? I asked. Mom's expression flickered, something I couldn't quite read. Nervousness? Guilt? Resting upstairs. Your father will get her when dinner's ready. Can I see her? She's tired, Claire. Don't make this difficult. I wanted to argue, but Dad appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. James Jenkins, at 55, looked older than he should. Gray hair, lines around his eyes, shoulders perpetually hunched like he was carrying invisible weight. Claire Bear, he said, using the nickname I'd hated since childhood. Good to see you. Hey, Dad. He didn't meet my eyes. He never did anymore. At 6:15 p.m., when it became clear that Mom's perfect schedule was slipping, she finally sent Dad upstairs to get Grandma. I sat at the dining room table, the same table where I'd eaten breakfast before school, done homework, been lectured about grades and attitude and gratitude. The same table where, at 17, I'd announced I was moving out, and Mom had said, "Fine, but don't come crawling back when you realize how hard the real world is." I hadn't crawled back. I'd survived. Madison sat across from me, scrolling through her phone. Ryan sends his apologies, she said without looking up. Big project at work. Sure, I said, though we both knew Ryan avoided these dinners whenever possible. Smart man. Footsteps on the stairs, slow, careful footsteps. And then I saw her. Grandma Catherine looked so much smaller than I remembered. 72 years old now, with white hair and a cardigan that hung loose on her frame. But her eyes were the same. Sharp, intelligent, and carrying something that looked like regret. Claire, she whispered when she saw me. I stood so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Grandma! She moved toward me, and I met her halfway, wrapping my arms around her carefully, afraid she might break. She felt like bird bones and sorrow. Look at you, she said, her hands coming up to cut my face. You've grown into such a strong woman. My throat tightened. I missed you. Oh, sweetheart, I missed you more than you'll ever know. Mom cleared her throat loudly. Let's sit down. Dinner's getting cold. I helped Grandma into the chair next to mine. She carried a worn leather satchel, which she placed on the floor beside her feet. Her hand kept drifting to it, protective, like it held something precious. Dad brought out the food, roasted chicken, garlic potatoes, green beans. Mom poured wine for everyone except Madison, who got sparkling water with a pointed comment about being responsible for the baby. For the first 20 minutes, we went through the motions of normal family dinner conversation. Dad talked about a construction project. Madison talked about a house she'd just sold for $1.2 million. Mom bragged about the kitchen renovation, $75,000, all funded by us, though Dad's paycheck had footed the bill. Through it all, Grandma watched us like she was studying strangers, like she was trying to figure out how the family she'd left had transformed into this brittle, artificial thing. Finally, she set down her fork. I have something to tell you, she said quietly. All of you. The table went silent. Mom's hand tightened around her wine glass. Mom, this isn't the time. This is exactly the time. Grandma's voice was frail but sharp, cutting through Mom's authority like a knife through butter. I've waited 20 years. I'm not waiting another day. She reached down to her satchel and pulled out an old manila envelope. The edges were worn, creased from years of handling. She slid it across the table toward me. Claire, she said softly, everything begins with you. My hands shook as I picked up the envelope. It was heavier than it looked, thick with documents. "Open it," Grandma said. I glanced at Mom. Her face had gone pale, her jaw clenched tight. "Grandma, what is this?" I asked. "The truth. Open it, sweetheart." I lifted the flap and pulled out the papers inside. They were old, yellowed at the edges, creased from folding and refolding. The top document was covered in legal text, dense and official. My eyes scanned the page, trying to make sense of the legal jargon. And then I saw it. Warranty deed. Property address, 428 Maple Grove Drive, Denver, Colorado. 80210. Grantor, Catherine Ann Jenkins. Grantee, Claire Marie Jenkins. Date of transfer, August 15, 2004. My vision blurred. I read it again and again. "This says," my voice came out as a whisper, "this says I've owned the house since I was 7 years old." "Yes," Grandma said. Tears filled her eyes. "I signed it over to you before I left." The room exploded. "That house is ours." Mom slammed her hand on the table, rattling the plates. "No," Grandma said firmly. "It never was." Dad's face had drained of all color. Madison's mouth hung open in shock. "I gave you temporary guardianship of the property until Claire turned 18, Grandma continued, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "But the house was always Claire's. I have the notarized papers. It's all legal." I stared at the deed again. Notarized, official, stamped with the seal of the state of Colorado. This house, this $900,000 house that my parents had used to control me, to guilt me, to make me feel like I owed them everything, had belonged to me for 20 years. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, looking up at Grandma. Mom stood up abruptly. "Don't listen to this. She's old. She's confused." "I'm not confused," Grandma cut her off. "And you know I'm not." Madison found her voice. "Wait, if the house is Claire's, what about the equity loan? The $300,000 you took out in 2022? The question landed like a bomb. Mom's eyes went wide. Dad looked like he might be sick. "What equity loan?" I asked slowly. Madison's face had gone ashen. "Mom and Dad took out a loan against the house. They said it was their house, so I didn't question it. They used $150,000 for my wedding and to help with our down payment." Her voice trailed off as the implication sank in. "You used my property to get a loan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You used my house to fund Madison's life." No one spoke. Grandma reached into her satchel again and pulled out another document. Her hands were shaking harder now. "I knew they might fight you on this," she said to me. "So I prepared protections." She slid the paper across the table. I unfolded it with numb fingers. It was a legal declaration dated last month, signed by Grandma and someone named Harold Brennan, attorney at law. The contents were clear. If my parents contested the ownership, if they tried to manipulate me, if they attempted to claim the house, Grandma had the right to testify and file charges for fraud, coercion, and unlawful exploitation of a minor's property. "Grandma," I breathed. "Why did you leave?" Mom scoffed. "Oh, please, not this story again." But Grandma raised her hand, and for the first time in my life I saw my mother actually stop talking. "I didn't leave," Grandma said quietly. "I was forced out." The silence that followed was deafening. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. Grandma looked down at her hands. They were spotted with age, trembling with emotion. "Your mother and father gave me an ultimatum 20 years ago," she said. "Move out of the house or lose my relationship with my grandchildren." My heart stopped. They told me I was interfering, that my presence was unwelcome, that they needed space to build their family without me. They pressured me, and eventually— Her voice broke. Eventually, I broke. "You're twisting things," Mom said, but her voice wavered. "No," Grandma said softly. "I'm telling the truth, at last." I felt cold, numb, like I was floating outside my own body, watching this scene unfold, Years of guilt, years of being told I was ungrateful, that I owed my parents everything, that I should be thankful for the roof over my head. And all along, the roof had been mine. They'd lied, manipulated, stolen my inheritance and used it to control me. I looked at the deed in my hands, then at my grandmother's tear-stained face, then at my parents. "Pack your things," I said quietly. Mom's head snapped up. "What?" I stood, carefully folding the deed and placing it in my purse. "You have 30 days to move out," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. "Legally, I'm giving you notice. This is my house. It's always been my house, and I want you out." The table erupted. "You can't do that!" Mom shouted, standing so abruptly her chair fell backward. "This is our home. We've lived here for 20 years," I interrupted, my voice cold. 20 years that you lied to me. 20 years that you used what was mine to control me. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Claire, please. Let's just talk about this rationally." "Rationally?" I turned to him. "You want to talk about rationality? Fine. Let's talk about the fact that for 20 years I received no tax documents, no property insurance notices, no utility bills with my name on them. Nothing that would tell me I owned this house." I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. Years of questions I'd pushed down, ignored, convinced myself didn't matter. But they'd always been there, nagging at the back of my mind. How is that possible? I looked at Grandma. If I owned the house, where did all the paperwork go? Grandma reached into her satchel one more time. This woman had come prepared for war. "Harold Brennan was your grandfather's attorney," she said, pulling out a thick folder. "When your grandfather died and I signed the house over to you, Harold helped me set up a trust structure to protect you." She spread documents across the table, contracts, agreements, correspondence. "The trust management agreement," she continued, pointing to a paper dated August 2004. "Your parents were named as property trustees until you turned 25. All legal correspondence was sent to Harold's office. He was supposed to forward relevant documents to your parents for management purposes, and they were supposed to keep you informed." I picked up one of the letters, addressed to James and Diane Jenkins, care of Brennan Law Office. "But they didn't keep me informed," I said slowly. "No, they didn't." Madison leaned forward, her face pale. "But Claire turned 25 2 years ago. What happened then?" Grandma's expression darkened. She pulled out another document, a signature page. "When Claire turned 18, she was supposed to be notified of the trust and given the option to assume management early or allow her parents to continue as trustees until she was 25. Grandma slid the paper toward me. "This is the document your parents filed with Harold's office, saying you chose to let them continue managing the property." I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. Claire M. Jenkins. Except it wasn't my signature. "I never signed this," I whispered. "I know," Grandma said. "I have samples of your real signature from birthday cards you sent me over the years. I showed them to a handwriting expert 3 months ago. This is a forgery." The room went silent except for Mom's sharp breathing. "This is insane," Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're making wild accusations." "Am I?" Grandma pulled out yet another document. "This is a report from a forensic document examiner named Patricia Winters. She analyzed the signature. Would you like me to read her conclusion?" Dad put his hand on Mom's arm. "Diane, don't." "Don't what?" Mom snapped. "Don't defend us against these ridiculous—" "Don't make it worse," Dad said quietly. "It's over." Mom's face crumpled, not with sadness, with rage. But I wasn't done. I picked up another paper from Grandma's pile, a statement from Denver County Property Tax Office. "The property taxes," I said. "For 20 years, someone's been paying them." I looked up at Grandma. "Who?" "The trust fund I established when your grandfather died. He had a life insurance policy, $120,000. I put it in trust for you specifically to cover property taxes and emergency maintenance until you were old enough to manage it yourself." I did the math quickly in my head, accountant brain kicking in automatically. Property taxes on an $850,000 house in this neighborhood would be roughly $2,800 per year. Over 20 years, that's $56,000. How much is left in the trust? I asked. About $62,000, Grandma said. Enough for another 20 years of taxes if needed. Madison's voice was small. What about utilities? The electric bill, water, gas? All of that has Mom and Dad's names on it. Because they paid those, Grandma said. They had to. If they'd tried to make Claire pay utilities on a house she didn't know she owned, questions would have been asked. So they paid the utilities to maintain the lie, I said. They paid a few $100s a month to keep control of an $850,000 asset that wasn't theirs. I looked at my parents, really looked at them. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom stared back at me with a mixture of defiance and desperation. Why? I asked. Why go through all this? Why not just tell me the truth when I turned 18, when I turned 25? No one answered. Ni noadak. Madison's voice cut through the silence, trembling. The equity loan, she said. Someone needs to explain the equity loan. Mom's face went white. Dad closed his eyes. What's she talking about? I asked, turning to Grandma. Grandma pulled out a folder marked Bank of Colorado, HELOC documentation. 3 months ago, when I came back to Denver, the first thing I did was hire a private investigator, she said. I needed to know what had happened to the house, to you, what I found. She shook her head. It was worse than I feared. She opened the folder and pulled out a loan statement. In March 2022, your parents took out a home equity line of credit against this property. The amount, $300,000. My stomach dropped. $300,000. They were able to do it because, technically, as trustees, they had the legal authority to access the home's equity for property management and family welfare purposes. Grandma's voice was bitter. The law assumed trustees would act in the beneficiary's best interest. But they didn't tell me, I said. I was 25. The trust should have ended. I should have been informed. You should have been informed at 18, Grandma interrupted. But they forged your signature saying you wanted them to continue. When you turned 25, they simply never filed the papers to end the trust. As far as the county records knew, they were still your legal trustees. Madison made a choking sound. Oh my God! I picked up the loan statement. The numbers swam before my eyes. Original amount, $300,000. Current balance, $285,000. Interest rate, 6.5%. Monthly payment, $1,850. Term, checked 15 years. Where did the money go? I asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Grandma pulled out another document, a spreadsheet meticulously detailed. My investigator traced the money, she said. Would you like me to read it? Yes, I said. Madison whispered. No. Grandma read anyway. $150,000 wired to Madison and Ryan Porter's account on April 15, 2022. Memo, wedding and house down payment. Madison's face was white as paper. Her hand went to her stomach, to the baby growing inside her. $80,000 spent on home renovations between May and September 2022. New kitchen, bathroom remodel, landscaping. I looked around the room with new eyes. The marble countertops, the spa bathroom, the perfectly manicured yard, all of it paid for with money borrowed against my property. $70,000 transferred to James and Diane Jenkins's personal account, used to pay off credit card debt and personal loans. The spreadsheet listed every charge, every payment, every lie. I turned to Madison, my sister, my competitor since birth, but also someone I'd loved despite everything. Did you know? I asked. Did you know the house was mine? No, Madison's voice broke. I swear, Claire, I had no idea. They told me they were taking out a loan against their house. They said they wanted to help us because Ryan and I were struggling with wedding costs and... She stopped, tears streaming down her face. If I'd known it was yours, I would never have accepted it. But you did accept it, Mom snapped. You took the money gladly. You didn't ask questions. You were happy to benefit. Because I trusted you, Madison shouted. You're my parents. Why would I think you were stealing from my sister? We didn't steal, Dad said quietly. We borrowed. We were going to pay it back. Were you? I asked. With what money? You're paying $1,850 a month on that loan. How were you planning to pay it back while also paying that? Silence. I looked down at the statement again. Something else caught my eye. The loan doesn't mature until 2037, I said. 15 years from now, I'll be 42 years old. You were planning to keep me in the dark for another 13 years? Or were you just hoping I'd never find out? We were going to tell you, Mom said, but her voice was weak. When? I demanded. When were you going to tell me? When the house was foreclosed on because you couldn't make the payments? When you needed me to bail you out? We've been making the payments, Dad protested. Barely, Grandma said. She pulled out bank statements, more evidence from her investigator. You've been late 4 times in the past year. The bank has sent warning letters. You're 1 missed payment away from default. The full picture crystallized in my mind. My parents were drowning in debt of their own making. They'd borrowed against my house to fund Madison's wedding and their own lifestyle, and now they couldn't afford the payments. Eventually, they would have come to me, asked for help, guilted me into it. You were going to make me pay for it, I said slowly. Eventually, you were going to tell me about the loan and make me feel responsible for paying it off, because it was the family house and family helps each other. The look on Mom's face told me I was right. Why? The word came out as a whisper. Why would you do this to me? For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Dad pushed his chair back and stood up. He looked older than 55. He looked ancient. The year 2004 was the worst year of my life, he said quietly. My construction company got sued. One of our workers fell from a scaffold, 3rd story. He was paralyzed. The lawsuit claimed we'd cut corners on safety equipment. I'd never heard this story. In all my years growing up, no one had ever mentioned it. We settled out of court for $180,000, Dad continued. Our insurance covered half. We had to come up with the rest. We sold everything we could, cashed out retirement accounts, took out personal loans, but it wasn't enough. He looked at me with hollow eyes. We were going to lose everything. The house was the only thing we had left. It was paid off. Your grandfather had made sure of that before he died. It was worth $400,000 back then. It was our security, our safety net. But it wasn't yours, I said. No, Dad admitted. It wasn't. Your grandmother wanted to sign it over to you. She said it was what your grandfather would have wanted, his estate going to his granddaughter. And you couldn't stand that, I said, looking at Mom. Mom's composure finally shattered. Her perfectly styled hair, her designer dress, her curated life, all of it crumbled. Do you have any idea what it's like? She said, her voice shaking. To watch your mother give away your inheritance? To be told that your 7-year-old daughter deserves the house more than you do? It wasn't about deserving, Grandma said quietly. It was about you loving her more than me, Mom shouted. It was always about that. Dad died and left everything to you, and you decided to skip me entirely and give it all to my daughter. My daughter! The truth, raw and ugly, spilled out. You were punishing me, Mom continued, tears streaming down her face. Punishing me for not being the daughter you wanted, for not being perfect enough, for marrying James instead of someone you approved of, for not living my life the way you thought I should. That's not true, Grandma said, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? Mom laughed bitterly. You always liked Michael more, your precious son who could do no wrong. Even when he was gambling away every penny he had, you made excuses for him. Michael needed help, Grandma said. And I didn't? Mom's voice broke. I needed help too, Mom. We were drowning. We were about to lose everything. And you chose that moment to sign the house over to Claire. I felt like I was watching a play I wasn't supposed to see. a decades-old drama that had shaped my entire life without me knowing. "So you gave Grandma an ultimatum," I said. "Sign over the house to me, but let you pretend it was yours. And if she didn't agree, she'd never see me or Madison again." "We were desperate," Dad said. "We didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," I said. "You could have told me the truth. You could have been honest." "You were 7 years old," Mom shouted. "What were we supposed to do? Tell a 7-year-old that she owned the house? Let her make decisions about our future?" "You could have told me when I was 18, or 21, or 25. My voice was steady, cold. "But you didn't. You kept lying because it was convenient, because it gave you control." I stood up, gathering the documents Grandma had brought. "Claire," Dad started. "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't try to justify this. Don't try to make me understand. You stole from me. You manipulated me. You made me feel like I owed you everything when all along, you were the ones who owed me." "We gave you a home," Mom said desperately. "We raised you. We fed you, clothed you, loved you." "That's called being a parent," I said. "That's what you're supposed to do. You don't get to hold basic parenting over my head like I should be grateful you didn't abandon me." Madison was crying quietly, her hands wrapped around her pregnant belly. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She'd been a pawn in this too, in her own way. Given money she thought was from our parents' generosity, not knowing it was stolen from me. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But first I need to hear the whole truth. All of it." I turned to Grandma. "There's more, isn't there? Something you haven't told me yet." Grandma's hands trembled as she reached for one more envelope, this one sealed, unopened. "Yes," she said quietly. "There's one more thing, and it's the hardest truth of all." She held the envelope out to me. "This is about why I left, the real reason. And sweetheart," her voice cracked, "I'm so sorry." I took the envelope from Grandma's trembling hands. It was heavier than the others, sealed with old wax that had cracked over time. "Before you open it," Grandma said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something. I need you to understand that I'm not innocent in this. I made mistakes too, terrible mistakes." "Mom, don't," my mother said, but there was no force behind the words. Grandma ignored her. "Claire, when your grandfather died, we had difficult decisions to make about the estate, the house, some savings, life insurance. Your grandfather wanted it divided fairly, half to your mother, half to your Uncle Michael." "Uncle Michael?" I said. The name was barely familiar, a ghost from childhood memories. "I haven't seen him since I was little." "That's my fault," Grandma said, tears rolling down her weathered cheeks. "Michael, my son, had a gambling problem. Severe. He'd lost jobs, relationships, thousands of dollars. Your grandfather and I had bailed him out more times than I can count. And when your grandfather died, he was terrified that Michael would gamble away his inheritance." She looked down at her hands, spotted with age and shaking with emotion. "But I made a different choice. I decided that Diane, your mother, was stable. She had James, a home, children. She didn't need the inheritance as desperately. So I put almost everything into a trust for you, my granddaughter. I told myself it was to protect the family assets, to ensure the next generation would be cared for." "But that wasn't the only reason," I said slowly, understanding dawning. "No," Grandma admitted. "I was angry at your mother. She'd made choices I didn't approve of. She'd married young, started a family before establishing herself. I thought she was wasting her potential. And Michael, despite everything, he was my baby boy. I kept hoping he'd turn his life around. I kept making excuses for him." Mom's face was a mixture of vindication and pain. "You always loved him more." "I loved you both," Grandma said, "but I failed you both. I was unfair to you, Diane. I punished you for not being who I wanted you to be, and I enabled Michael when I should have let him face consequences." The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden in the tense silence. We all froze. I'll get it, Dad said quietly, leaving the dining room. Voices from the hallway, Dad's low murmur and another voice, deeper, unfamiliar. Then footsteps. A man appeared in the doorway. Late 50s, gray-bearded, wearing worn jeans and a flannel shirt. His eyes were the same shade of blue as my mother's. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Mom said there was something important happening tonight." "Michael," Mom breathed. Uncle Michael Jenkins stepped into the room, and I saw 20 years of hard living in his face. But I also saw something else. Clarity. Sobriety. Peace. "Hey, Diane," he said softly. Then his eyes found me. "Claire. God, you've grown up. Last time I saw you, you were maybe 8? 7, I said, right before Grandma left. Right before I helped drive her away, he corrected. He pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. Mom called me 3 days ago, told me what she was planning to do tonight. I thought I should be here. He looked around the table, taking in the scattered documents, the tear-stained faces, the palpable tension. "So," he said, "I'm guessing she told you about the estate, about how she cut Diane out to protect me. And how she signed everything over to Claire instead of splitting it fairly," Mom said bitterly. Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's about right." He turned to Mom. "Diane, I'm sorry. I'm sorry Mom put you in this position. I'm sorry my addiction hurt you. I'm sorry for all of it." "Why are you here?" Mom asked, her voice hollow. "Because I'm 10 years sober," Michael said simply. "I work as a recovery counselor now. I help other addicts get clean, and part of my recovery has been making amends. I should have done this years ago." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table to me. "This is a legal document renouncing any claim I might have had to Dad's estate. I signed it 5 years ago when I got serious about recovery. I wanted Mom to know that I wasn't waiting around for her to die so I could inherit something. That money, it was poison to me. It would have killed me." I unfolded the paper. It was notarized, official, and very clear. "You gave up your inheritance," I said. "I gave up blood money," Michael corrected. "Money I would have used to destroy myself. Best decision I ever made." Grandma was crying openly now. "Michael, honey, it's okay, Mom," he said gently. "It really is. I'm healthier now than I've ever been. I have a purpose. I have peace. Those things are worth more than any house." He turned to my mother. "But Diane, you got hurt in all of this. Mom was trying to protect me, and she ended up making you feel like you didn't matter, like you weren't loved. And that wasn't fair." Mom's carefully constructed walls finally crumbled completely. She put her face in her hands and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like 20 years of pain coming out all at once. "She gave everything to my daughter," Mom choked out. "Everything, and I felt like I was nothing, like I didn't matter to my own mother." "You mattered," Grandma said, reaching across the table. "Oh, Diane, you mattered so much. I was a foolish old woman trying to control everything, trying to fix Michael by protecting his inheritance, trying to teach you a lesson about, I don't even know what anymore. Independence? Responsibility? I was wrong. I hurt you, and that led you to hurt Claire, and now we're all broken." The room was silent except for Mom's crying and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, the same clock that had marked time through all these years of secrets and lies. I looked at the envelope still in my hands. "What's in here?" Grandma wiped her eyes. "Letters. From me to you. 20 years of letters that I wrote but never sent. Letters that your parents made sure you never received. I wanted you to know I was thinking of you, that I loved you. But part of our agreement was that I couldn't contact you directly. They controlled all communication." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of letters, birthday cards, Christmas cards, all addressed to me, all unopened. "Dear Claire, you're 8 today. I wonder if you remember me. Dear Claire, I heard you lost your first tooth. I wish I could have been there. Dear Claire, you're starting high school. I'm so proud of you. Dear Claire, you're 18 now, an adult. I hope someday you'll understand why I left. 20 years of love, sealed away, hidden. I set the letters down carefully, like they might shatter. Everyone was watching me. Mom with her tear-stained face, Dad with his guilt-ridden eyes, Madison with her protective hand on her pregnant belly, Grandma with her grief and hope, Uncle Michael with his hard-won wisdom. I want everyone to listen to me, I said, standing up. My voice was steady, cold, clear. For 20 years, you used this house to control me. I looked at my parents. You made me feel like I owed you. You told me I was ungrateful. You made me believe that leaving home was abandoning you. You used guilt like a weapon, and the entire time the house was mine. Mom opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Madison, you weren't innocent either, even if you didn't know the full truth. You took $150,000 that came from my property. You benefited while I worked 2 jobs to make rent. Madison's face crumpled, but I continued. Grandma, you started this. Your favoritism, your manipulation, your need to control everyone's lives, it poisoned this family. You created the conditions that made my parents feel desperate and angry enough to do what they did. Grandma nodded, accepting the truth of it. And Uncle Michael, I turned to him. I barely know you, but you're here, which is more than you've been for most of my life. Fair enough, he said quietly. I picked up my phone and opened the calculator app. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm taking control of my property. The trust ends now. My parents' trusteeship ends now. As of this moment, I am the sole owner and decision-maker for 428 Maple Grove Drive. Claire, Dad started. I'm not finished, I said coldly. I could call a lawyer right now. I could have you evicted for fraud and misrepresentation. I could press charges for forgery. I could sell this house out from under you and leave you with nothing. The threat hung in the air. But I'm not going to do that, I continued. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I'm not like you. I'm not going to destroy my family out of anger. I pulled up the spreadsheet on my phone, the one I'd been building mentally for the last hour. Here are my terms. They're non-negotiable. You can accept them, or you can get out. I turned my phone screen so everyone could see the spreadsheet I'd created. First, legal acknowledgement. Mom, Dad, you will sign a legal document drafted by a real attorney acknowledging that you fraudulently claimed ownership of this property and forged my signature on trust documents. This document will be notarized and filed with the county. Dad's face went pale, but he nodded. Second, the home equity loan. Total remaining balance is $285,000. Here's how it gets paid back. I looked at Madison. You received $150,000. You'll pay back that full amount plus 3% interest compounded annually. That comes to roughly $164,000. You'll pay $2,000 per month for 7 years. Madison gasped. Claire, Ryan and I can't afford. You'll make it work, I said. You have jobs. You have skills. You took the money, you pay it back. But I'm giving you 7 years because you're having a baby and I'm not completely heartless. I turned to my parents. You're responsible for the remaining $135,000 plus the ongoing interest. But here's the thing. You don't get to keep living here for free while you figure it out. What do you mean? Mom asked, her voice small. I mean, you're going to rent this house from me. Market rate for a 4-bedroom house in this neighborhood is about $300 per month. I'm going to charge you $2,500 because I'm not trying to bankrupt you. That money goes directly to paying down the loan principal. I did the math aloud. At $2,500 per month, that's $30,000 per year. In 4.5 years, your portion of the debt will be paid off. Add Madison's 7 years of payments, and the full loan will be settled in 7 years. Where are we supposed to get $2,500 a month? Dad asked. The same place you were getting $1,850 for the loan payment, I said. You'll cut back. You'll budget. You'll live within your means instead of borrowing against assets that aren't yours. I turned to my spreadsheet again. Third, living arrangements. You have 2 years to live here at the rental rate I've set. After 2 years, you find somewhere else or we renegotiate. I'm not making any promises beyond 2 years. 2 years, Mom repeated numbly. Fourth, Grandma comes home. She'll live here with me. I'm moving back in. Everyone's heads snapped up. You're moving back? Madison asked. This is my house, I said simply. I'm done paying $1,400 a month for a shoebox apartment when I own a house with 4 bedrooms. Grandma and I will take the master bedroom and one other room. You'll have the other 2 bedrooms and shared spaces. We'll establish boundaries and house rules, and everyone will follow them. I looked at my parents. If you don't like it, leave. Find your own place. But the rent offer ends if you walk away now. Neither of them moved. 5th, family therapy, all of us. Once a week for 6 months minimum. We're going to talk about this with a professional. We're going to work through the damage, or at least try to. I can't afford therapy, Mom said. I'll cover it, Uncle Michael said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. I have savings. I can pay for family therapy. Consider it my way of making amends. I nodded. Thank you. 6th, I continued, public apology. Mom, Dad, you're going to write me a letter. A real letter, handwritten explaining what you did and why it was wrong. You're going to read it aloud to me, to Madison, to Grandma, and to Uncle Michael. You're going to own your actions. That's humiliating, Mom whispered. Yes, I agreed. It is, but it's also honest, and this family needs honesty more than it needs comfort. I set my phone down. Those are my terms. You have 48 hours to decide. If you refuse, I call my lawyer Monday morning and start eviction proceedings. If you accept, we sign contracts and start the process of rebuilding. The silence stretched out for a long moment. Then Dad spoke. I accept. Mom looked at him, then at me, then at the papers scattered across the table. Evidence of 20 years of lies. I need time, she said. You have 48 hours, I repeated. Not a minute more. I gathered the documents, the deed, the letters, and put them all in my bag. Then I stood and offered my hand to Grandma. Let's go home, I said. Tears streamed down Grandma's face, but she was smiling. She took my hand, and together we walked toward the door. Claire, Madison called out. Wait. I turned. My sister stood up, one hand on her pregnant belly. I'll pay. Every month. I promise. I didn't know, but that doesn't make it right. I'll make it right. 2 days later, I received an email from my mother. Subject: We accept Claire. Your father and I accept your terms. All of them. We'll sign the documents. We'll pay the rent. We'll attend therapy. And we'll write the letter. I don't know if you can forgive us. I don't know if you should. But I hope that someday we can find a way to be a family again. A real family, not one built on lies. We're ready to start. Mom. 3 weeks later, we gathered in Dr. Sarah Whitman's office, a calm, neutral space with soft lighting and comfortable chairs that somehow made the hard conversations slightly easier. Dr. Whitman was in her mid-40s with warm brown eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She'd specialized in family trauma for 15 years, and Uncle Michael had found her through his recovery network. Today, Dr. Whitman said, Diane and James have prepared something they want to share with the family. Mom's hands shook as she pulled out a folded piece of paper. She'd lost weight over the past 3 weeks. She looked smaller, older, more fragile than I'd ever seen her. Claire, she began, her voice barely steady. I wrote this for you. She unfolded the paper and began to read. Dear Claire, I stole from you. That's the truth, plain and simple. I took what was yours and pretended it was mine. I lied to you for 20 years. I made you feel like you owed me when I was the one who owed you. I told myself I had good reasons. We were desperate. We were scared. We needed stability. But none of those reasons justify what I did. Fear doesn't excuse theft. Desperation doesn't excuse manipulation. I used your house to control you. I made you feel guilty for wanting independence. I made you feel ungrateful for questioning me. I turned your childhood home into a prison and your inheritance into a weapon. I did this because I was angry. Angry at my mother for choosing you over me. Angry at the world for being unfair. Angry at myself for not being enough. And I let that anger poison everything. I let it poison you. I'm sorry. I know those words aren't enough. They can't give you back 20 years. They can't undo the damage. But they're all I have. I was wrong. I am sorry. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Mom. Her voice broke on the last word. She folded the paper carefully and set it down. Dad cleared his throat. He had his own letter. Claire, I failed you. I knew what we were doing was wrong, and I did it anyway. I told myself I was protecting our family, but I was really just protecting myself, protecting my pride, protecting my ego. I let fear make me weak. I let shame make me cruel. And I let your mother carry the blame when we were both responsible. I should have stopped it. When you turned 18, when you turned 25, I should have said, enough, she deserves the truth. But I didn't. I stayed silent, and silence is its own kind of lie. I'm sorry for being a coward. I'm sorry for failing to be the father you deserved. And I'm sorry for teaching you that family means control instead of love. I don't know how to fix this, but I'm going to try. Dad. The room was silent except for the sound of quiet crying. Madison was wiping her eyes. Grandma had her hand over her mouth. Uncle Michael sat with his arms crossed, but his eyes were red. And me? I didn't cry. I felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out all the anger and pain and left only space. Thank you, I said quietly. That's a start. Spring came to Denver, and with it, change. I stood in the backyard of 428 Maple Grove Drive, my house, watching Grandma tend to her rose bushes. She'd pruned them back in February, and now they were blooming again. Pink and red and white flowers opening to the sun. The house felt different now, lighter, like secrets weighing it down had finally been lifted. Grandma and I had taken the master bedroom. I'd painted it a soft gray and hung art I actually liked. Not Mom's choices, mine. My room was down the hall, set up as both a bedroom and a home office. I'd quit my job at the Copper Mug and was taking on freelance accounting clients from home. Mom and Dad still lived here in the 2 smaller bedrooms. True to their word, they paid $2,500 in rent on the first of every month. Dad had gotten a new contract, a big one, and their financial situation was improving. Mom had started seeing a personal therapist in addition to our family sessions. We weren't close. We might never be close. But we were talking, really talking, for the first time in my life. Madison came over every week with her husband Ryan, who'd finally come around after the initial shock. She'd given birth in May, a beautiful baby girl named Catherine Jenkins Porter after Grandma. Catherine was 2 weeks old now, a tiny creature with dark eyes and perfect fingers. And true to her word, Madison had made her first $2,000 payment, and her second, and her third. Uncle Michael had become an unexpected anchor in the family, the mediator when tensions rose, the voice of experience when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. He and I had coffee every Sunday morning. I was getting to know him, this uncle I'd barely remembered. The house would never be what my parents had tried to make it, a symbol of their control, their success, their power. But it was becoming something else, something better, a place where broken things could heal, where honest conversations could happen, where a family could be rebuilt piece by piece on a foundation of truth instead of lies. I heard the back door open. Grandma looked up from her roses. "Claire, honey," she called. "There's someone on the phone for you, the real estate attorney? Something about the final paperwork?" "Coming," I called back. The final paperwork. The official transfer of the property completely into my name, with all trustee provisions removed. The legal end of 20 years of lies. I walked across the lawn, my lawn, toward the house, my house, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was home. Not because of the building, not because of the property value or the equity or the investment, but because I'd fought for it, because I'd faced the truth, no matter how painful, because I'd chosen justice over revenge and healing over hate. Grandma caught my hand as I passed. "Your grandfather would be proud of you," she said softly. "I hope so," I said. "I know so," she replied. "You're stronger than all of us. You did what we couldn't. You told the truth and still found room for mercy." I squeezed her hand. We're all trying, Grandma. That's what matters. Inside, the phone was waiting. The attorney had good news. Everything was finalized. The house was mine, legally and completely, with no strings attached. As I hung up, I looked around the living room. Mom was reading on the couch. Dad was fixing a leaky faucet in the kitchen. Normal, domestic, mundane. But underneath it all, honesty, accountability, the slow, painful work of rebuilding trust. It wasn't perfect. It might never be perfect, but it was real. And that, finally, was enough.